Okay, this one should be a pretty interesting video. I have to let everybody know, though, that is watching this and is, benefiting at all from this. You got to kind of understand what's going on. And it's really, really hard for me to respond or even read some of these emails and messages and comments. I have attempted to put out one other video, and you can see it was just, people wanted to just spam, and it was pointless to even have the conversation. I even had one conversation with somebody that appeared to want to be interested, but I really sensed that he really wasn't interested until I wasted a ton of time only to find out that when, push came to shove, he was just going to mock it anyways without really hearing the message. So it is really, really hard to find out who's sincere and who isn't. I'm not into censorship at all, but what I view in my world is actually censoring out the people that probably want to say something. But it's like when you get these negative comments, it's I know that I'll be transformed into that evil if I read it. I will get upset. That's just, somebody wants to show hate, and I read that level of hate directed at me, I will be affected by it. You cannot stop that. It will be hurtful. I will be hurt. This is no short of torture. This is emotional torture that is going on. No human can actually be strong enough and be able to handle it. But for anybody that's watching my channel and think that I'm kind of handling this level of attacks well emotionally, a lot of it has to do with the tools that I'm trying to introduce. One of the things that I, first of all, I was born into abuse, being beaten at 3 years old. And, having a loving heart, I'd rather not blame my parents, not look at them as bad people, but just try and understand where they were coming from. Why would you do that to somebody you claim to love? And because I had that perspective from a very young age and wanted to understand an awful lot of things that were going on, it led to, the level of research that I've done. Read a lot of self-help books. Like from the time I was a kid, I want to find out as much information as possible. Even seen lots of counselors, which tried a lot of their advice, and most of it's all crap. And so it led me to become this person that's extremely critical. That when I see somebody's suggestion of an answer, it's like, okay, now I know the contradictions because I've tried all your shit and I see that, well, that didn't work and that didn't work. So as soon as I'm reading somebody's shit, I'm looking at, okay, where is this bullshit? Where is this not right? And versus over what is right. But at the same time, I am listening, trying to research that actually, explains the stuff that I've seen. Being the love is like, that'll get you dead fast. And a good way to understand that is if there were only 10 people in the whole planet, and one person had one belief and there was one other person that had a totally different belief, that then if one had a belief system that actually did harm to the one that didn't have the same belief system, then his voice, the message, the influence has the potential to influence all 8 other people on the planet, which would make 8 people against this one person, which will ultimately, one way or another, kill that one person just because of the level of attacks that would go on to a person that's in disagreement. So if you were just the love and just said, I'm just going to be the love, while you have 9 people attacking you at all times, how are you going to stand strong in love? Like love has to actually mean something. So being in love just doesn't solve any problems. It's actually, to the most part, a lot of reasons that cause a lot of women to deal with abuse, because they are people pleasers. They will, put other people's needs before themselves. So you do have to stand strong. You do have to say your voice, but how we communicate that voice needs to be within love. Now, um, some of the things that I also wanted to explore is, like, I did have a really, really strong connection with God. If I didn't have God in my life, I sure as hell wouldn't have survived my life experience. Um, Wanted to understand that. Wanted to understand, how is it I'm getting these voices from God, which appears to be God? And there's been these really, really wild, wild God experiences that I've had. It started being more like God provides, apparent when I lost my eyesight. I was about 5 or 6 years old. I had perfect eyesight, and then the next day I lost my eyesight. And nobody believed me because it happened overnight. And it was like, not just I couldn't see clearly, I couldn't see nothing basically. And so it took about a month of a lot of harassment, because I was being told I was lazy, or I was this, or I was that. A lot of name calling happened. And so I finally ended up getting glasses. So it was like, okay, now the next 10 years, the glasses are Coke bottles. So you think that that didn't get a lot of harassment at school. And I'm telling you that I measured them at the technology when I was about 12. They were just a tad shy of an inch thick. So they weren't pleasant to wear. And I'm like, please, God, please, I will, do whatever it is you want me to do. I'll be the best person I can possibly be if you could just get me contacts. And lo and behold, my mother had made an appointment to the optometrist the next day. And like, this was nothing that I knew about. And went to the optometrist, and the guy says that I needed contact lenses, that this would help my eyes from not growing worse, because what was happening is every 6 months I needed to strengthen my glasses all the time, which was an expense to my mom. My parents would never buy, anything that wasn't necessary. They were, very wise with their money, and extras just were not part of our reality. So there's no way my mother would ever buy me contacts. And plus, it wasn't actually somewhat legal in the profession to give kids contacts. You had to be 16, and I believe I was about 12. But this guy was basically saying that it'll be cheaper if I had contact lenses. My eyes would be saved if I had contact lenses. And so it was like, there is a God. I got contact lenses. So that got me to, okay, how did that happen? How is it that I got, this magical thing come up? And I'll just share just sort of a few of the highlights that are kind of really interesting. And this might be a two-parter video. Um, the other thing that really, really stood out is I was living in Canmore, Alberta, which is one of the most expensive areas in Canada to live in. My husband wanted to be a park ranger. So we kind of, with free trade that had come in, and job losses, and he wanted to be this park ranger. So I supported him. We had to move into the area so he could at least apply for the jobs. But we were basically homeless. We lived in a very, very small camper with 4 children for over 4 months. And then we ended up getting into low-income housing. He did get some training courses that were paid next to nothing, and because of the size of our family, we were being subsidized by social services, and got into low-income housing. And just one day I decided that, what, I want something better for my life. I want a home to actually live in. We had no credit, we had no savings, basically no jobs. And because if I went to work, the cost of daycare, I would have had to actually pay to go to work. So it just wasn't even cost effective at that time. But we had everything going against us, bad credit, no income, um, everything. But I just was going around town telling everybody I'm buying a house, and within 2 weeks I moved into a new home. And what had happened is I just was letting everybody know I'm moving into a house. Everybody knew that there's no way that's going to happen. But, you're crazy for even thinking something like that. But one day I walked into the post office and ran into a friend, and she asked me what was new. And I said, well, I'm moving in, I'm buying a house. And she was like, well, how are you going to pull that one off? And before I ended up answering, somebody interrupted us, and somebody wealthy that just wanted to dump their property and was desperate. They didn't even want to um, put it up for sale. They were just like dump it and wanted to leave. They had bought a piece of land. They were going to build this really, really big house, and they were going to lived in this brand new mobile home. Jacuzzi tub, skylights. I mean, it was beautiful, brand new, huge. And they were going to live in that while their house was being built, but they had decided to live in their other house in the States for the winter. And while they were there, they decided that they didn't want to live in Canmore anymore, so they just wanted to dump their property and move on. So they basically did everything they could to make sure I, assumed. Um, I don't even think it was an assuming of their mortgage. Could have been. I don't know. I was like totally oblivious as to how everything got approved, how down payments were done, everything got done within about 2 weeks. We had moved into a brand new home from the day that I said that I was buying a house. So that was one thing. Um, Another one, which is really, really funny, is I had trying to get out of this abusive marriage. I needed to figure out an income and still be able to support my kids, through a divorce. So I was trying a lot of different things at home to earn a living, and one of them was painting hard hats. My ex was in the oil field, and he was painting these paintings on hard hats and making some extra income from it. And I'm pretty good at art, so I figured I'd try it. And he started getting into airbrushing. So we ended up buying these two cheap airbrushes from Walmart. And this is really, really funny. Um, so I'm making my first airbrush painting of a wolf and a polar bear. And in the same time, I had these Mormons come to the house, and they wanted to teach me about God. And it's like they were into shunning, which I wasn't really supportive of that. And but I was always searching out for information from all religions, so that's why they, kind of were at my doors, because I sort of was looking at that religion until I had seen that okay, it's not really something I'm into. But they wanted to come and talk to me, so I said okay, fine, but I'm painting. So they came, had a nice little chat, as I was painting, and so that as soon as they left, the airbrush broke, the needle in the airbrush broke, and for some odd reason, it was like the first thing that came out of my head is God wouldn't show me that I had this much talent and then just take the tools away from me. God's mailing me an airbrush. And I was just having a ton of fun for the next week, letting everybody know God's mailing me an airbrush. And well, I was just bored as hell and having fun with myself. But I was like really believing, really, really believing that God was going to provide this airbrush and He's going to mail it to my house. So the next week, these Mormons come back and they ask me, what's your connection with God? And I said, well, God's mailing me an airbrush. And they said, well, no, God doesn't work that way. You have to get a job. You have to save your money, for, buy your own airbrush. And it's like, well, no, that's your connection with God. My God's mailing me an airbrush. Lo and behold, I got an airbrush mailed to me within 2 weeks again, which was really, really odd. And what had happened is we had taken the two cheap airbrushes back, one that my ex was using and mine, and we bought a professional one. And because my ex was the one that was starting it and actually had that second income going, he had that one. But he had taken it to work, and it was too dusty or too sensitive. For some reason, it just wouldn't work for him at work. So he mailed it back home, and it then became my airbrush. So magically, you have a way of changing the universe so that it actually works for you. but it's something that I really, really wanted to study. I'm going to move on to another video, part 2.